Welcome to the Fintech Scaling Show. This podcast is sponsored by Scale Up Consulting, helping fintech startups accelerate customer acquisition and set up business operations to scale systematically. When you're ready to grow, reach out to us at richard@scaleupconsulting.co. Now, over to the show with Richard Doty, founder and host.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today on the show, we have Mark Berry, Director of Customer and Partner Success at Fintech OS out here in the UK, in London. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, Richard. Yeah, good. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to having a chat. And yeah, all good.
Cool. I mean, maybe we can kick off the show with you telling us a bit about yourself and a bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, currently I work for Fintech OS, which is, end-to-end digital transformation specialist. There I'm running the customer success and partner success team. My background over the last kind of 10, 12 years or so has been focused on customer success. So I worked for a large global financial information company called FactSet, which is an American company, and there I started out on the ground in customer success, working with banks, hedge funds, asset managers, and then through that, over a period of 9 years or so, went through the management structure, and I ended up running customer success across continental Europe. And then a couple of years ago, I jumped over into the startup world. I joined Bud, which is an open banking startup here in the UK, and I spent a few months there, building out the customer support function. And then pretty much exactly a year ago, I jumped over to Fintech OS, again, to help build out the customer success setup. And again, from there, over the last 12 months, I've taken on a couple of more responsibilities, partner success being one, and also looking after our training and enablement setup. And so, Fintech OS, it's a Romanian company. It was founded in Romania in a few years ago by a couple of entrepreneurs. And, we work with financial institutions mostly, not only, but mostly financial institutions, to help them, bring, new, innovative digital solutions to market, quicker they could do on their own, basically. So, we work from things like building mobile apps to help them onboard a new customer or open a new account, in insurance, getting them new insurance quotes or managing their insurance stuff online. But we can also do the back end stuff as well. So core banking infrastructure, core insurance infrastructure. And then again, we have like retail customers and public bodies we work with. Pretty varied approach. And, we've won a couple of awards the last few years. We've been voted the hottest startup in Europe. We've been in the Fintech 50. So it's been a quick growth. And really, from year to year, we're expanding and, right now looking to grow our presence, globally.
Cool, and a really interesting background. I mean, maybe let's stay on Fintech OS for a second. You mentioned you work with financial institutions and what have you to help them innovate. I mean, could you maybe give us an example of how you help these financial institutions innovate and what sort of value you guys bring to the equation?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a couple of angles to this, and that we think about really. And the first one is speed to market, and basically helping firms, financial institutions move quicker and more effectively in terms of innovation and digital innovation specifically, than they could do on their own. Most traditional financial institutions, across Europe, big banks, big insurance companies, they're just ill-equipped in lots of different ways to, move quickly from a technology perspective to really keep pace with, what consumers are expecting now, and also competitors, challenger banks, insurtechs, that are really built from the ground up on modern technology and with a modern view of what consumers are demanding. So if you take the insurance world, for example, if you look at firms like Lemonade, which is just IPO'd very successfully. You've got companies like Allen, France. Most big insurance companies that you can think of are like they're a million miles away from being able to offer what these guys offer in terms of user experience, customer service, business model, etc. And so, whilst we can't build the next Lemonade tomorrow, what we do is we work with insurance companies to help them move in that direction and quicker and cheaper, quite frankly, than they can do otherwise. And so, for example, we've seen this obviously over the last 6 months, especially in Eastern Europe. We have a lot of our business in banking, that actually also in insurance. It's a very branch driven system there, financial services, and of course over the last 6-8 months or so, that's caused problems. And so, a lot of these banks have had to accelerate, their ability to do stuff online. And even if a lot of these places had, mobile apps or online offerings for things like opening a current account, when it comes to things like mortgages or loans, doing online, they just don't have it set up. And so it's things like that which they'll come to us and say, we can build that and get them something out in maybe 6, 8, 10 weeks, which is really low risk for them relative to investing and building it themselves. And so that's really that acceleration is really one of our USPs. And then I think the other side of it is really then, as well as speed, is bringing them, and by them I mean kind of the financial institutions, closer to their customers and vice versa. And I think most banks, insurance companies now, they have a very detached, I'd say, transactional relationship, which is often designed to be beneficial to the institution and, at the detriment of the customer. For example, with insurance, making it very difficult to understand why your policies go up year on year, or making it very difficult to cancel insurance policies, for example. But yeah, if you look at in banking, making it in the past very difficult to freeze your card when you lose it and stuff like that. But if you look at, the approaches that, again, the insurtechs, the challenger banks, etc., are taking, they built themselves with a big focus on personalization, on the user experience. And they're trying to have an ongoing relationship with the users in terms of building them into an ecosystem, rather than it just being once a year you speak to an insurance company to cancel or renew it. So we talk a lot about, with our customers, we have this concept of hyper personalization, which is basically helping companies that we work with use the data that they have, which is usually spread over, disparate systems, a legacy infrastructure, really difficult to surface, really difficult to really use it. So we basically, have what we call an evolutive data core, which basically sits on top of their infrastructure and allows them to use all of that data in a way which gives them, the ability to offer really tailored, personalized, meaningful service to the customers. And so I think, that combination of, speed to market, but also the ability to really be smarter in terms of what you can offer to them, is where we speak to a lot of customers.
That's a very interesting insight there. Just, I guess, for our listeners, so we all grasp the concept. I mean, am I right in saying that you help financial institutions innovate and compete with, fintechs, insurtechs, etc., and also, you help them get closer to their customers, make it a more customer-centric journey rather than a transactional journey?
Yeah, exactly. That said, we don't just work with, the traditional firms. So we do have contacts, with, modern challenger banks, with other providers. So, if you look, for example, at a couple of other things which, have come in over the last few years, and, things like digital security, digital know your customer stuff.
Yeah.
You've got firms out there like Onfido, got, other firms out there doing things like digital signatures. So things like, companies like DocuSign, Numerial, others, all of these kind of, let's say, standalone components, of a journey, and so we refer to the term journey a lot in Fintech OS. So, for example, opening a current account on your mobile app, that's a journey, or taking a loan out online is a journey. A lot of these things over the last few years have come in where, again, because, you can't walk into a branch now, or, because of obviously COVID, or because people just don't want to do that anymore. Things like being able to verify your identity online using, a selfie, Revolut really kind of, I think, brought this type of thing to market, being able to quickly onboard on your app, using a video call, being able to sign a document electronically, using a one-time passkey, things like that. So all of these types of companies now, which, are forming this ecosystem really of fintechs, we work with a lot of these types of companies, in terms of integrating them into our offering so that we can really offer, an end-to-end flexible solution across different markets and across different verticals. So we work with, a lot of traditional insurance firms, traditional banks, etc., and on F side, but then we're also working with these types of cutting edge technologies as well to really try and make sure that, we have a product which can work across different use cases.
Makes complete sense. I mean, let's take a step into your world, customer and partner success. I mean, and maybe the first sort of insight is trying to understand how your experience, your previous experience, has helped you in setting up that team and that organization. Because obviously you guys are scaling pretty fast, so it's had to be done at a rapid pace.
Yeah, absolutely. And my background has positioned me quite well in the sense that I worked for a big global company to start with, and I spent a lot of years there. And, again, both on the ground. So I was the CSM, the customer success manager, basically going in, every day to investment banks, into wealth managers, etc., and really working with the users to understand, what are you trying to get out of the system? How can we set it up to be able to really benefit you? As I grew in that role, and as I, started to work with, more institutions in different geographies, and I started to kind of take on more responsibility, I got to understand, obviously how to, manage people and lead teams, but also how to, work with customers and to understand, especially in financial services, how to communicate with these types of banks who, a lot of the time, they don't know what they want, or internally the communication can sometimes be challenging. And so really trying to work with them to help them understand what it is they're trying to do. And I think working in a big company like that gave me a lot of exposure. We worked with pretty much every major banker in the world, every major asset manager. And so I was really to be able to get a broad view of how to deal with these types of institutions and how to work with big teams. I mean, by the time I left, I was managing 100 people across EMEA. And then from there, jumping straight into a startup, which was, less than 100 people and had just come off Series A and didn't have any clients basically, and setting stuff up from scratch, again, that really gave me a grounding in terms of, when you have nothing, when you have none of that stuff that I had at FactSet, what you need to do and how quickly do you need to move, and how you really start from the ground in terms of looking at, what it is as a company you're trying to achieve, where you fit in, what processes you need first. And again, how to approach, as a startup, we were talking to, again, some of the biggest banks in the world. And when you're a startup and when you have, no name and no brand and no processes, obviously, the conversations that you have and the challenges that you have in dealing with big banks is very different. And they have a very different view of you. And, the way that you have to prove yourself and talk about yourself is very different. And, they hold all the cards, basically. And so I think that really opened my eyes in terms of, when you're building a support function at that level and a success function, as well as kind of operate at a leadership level in that type of company, what's important in terms of, first and foremost, your product has to be on point, your messaging has to be on point, because that, and then everything in terms of your company has to really give the customer confidence. And so I kind of moving into Fintech OS, I think that's that, I've taken those lessons forward. And I think, here I've started to think about, again, as a startup, and over the last 12 months or so, I think we've been, customer success is definitely an evolving function here. And when you're growing at the pace that we do, I think, we've really taken a lot of kind of tactical or short-term views in terms of what we're doing in CS. And so, I try to take a very pragmatic approach in that, the focus, for us right now as a startup is on, execution, on growth, on, making sure our customers are happy, and, things like, processes and how we operationalize stuff and all that kind of conversation is, it's important, but it takes a back seat, to making sure that, if a customer needs something and, we need to make them happy, then if it's not in a job description or et cetera, it doesn't really matter. It's about making sure that, the customer, gets what they need. And so for us in CS over the last 12 months, really it's been a case of jumping around and wearing different hats, so doing firefighting or tackling daily questions, or doing project management, or doing revenue or churn management, or negotiating renewals, etc. So whilst we've brought in some CS processes, so we have a pretty basic like health scoring system, for example, which we use to set objectives, it's really been about that focus on execution first, and making sure that as a company we build credibility with the clients in terms of delivering what we say we're going to deliver. So I think that's been the big learning experience, I think, that I've into this role. And obviously on the back of that, we're looking at building out the strategy and the real structure around CS. And that's something that we're going through right now. So, one of the challenges with CS sometimes, especially when you do that kind of tactical approach that I've talked about, is that, the role of CS can be a bit unstructured. It can be a bit blurry. They do a bit of sales, they do a bit of delivery, they do a bit of project management, they do a bit of even, creating legal documents and stuff. So, it can see a bit, well, what's the defined role? What are the objectives? And so, what we're trying to do right now is take a step back and say, what does customer success mean at Fintech OS? Not just in terms of the job role, not just in terms of the function, but, as a company, what's our CS philosophy? How do we all work together? How does sales and customer success and delivery fit together to really, work around that concept of making our customers successful? And I'm very fortunate. So I report to the CEO, and he's a big believer in CS. And I think he admits himself, over the last 12 months or so, his knowledge and understanding of CS has grown. He's educated himself around why it's important. Again, not in terms of, the function or job role of CSMs, but in terms of the concept as a revenue, recurring revenue based company, why it's so important that we have, a customer success philosophy. So I think, that's still a path that we're on. There's still, journey that and things that we need to go through. But I think we're starting on that path now, and over the next kind of 6 months or so, it's something which is at the forefront of our mind as a company.
A lot of interesting points you mentioned there. I'll pick one out. You mentioned execution first. And I love that because it's important to execute. It's important to make certain that your clients see value quickly. And on that note, when you onboard a new client and, they're onboarded on day one, how do you make certain they get value, extremely quickly right off the bat on day one? Is there, methods or tactics you use to get that value into the client?
So again, I would say that, time to value, and speed of delivery it's like literally part of our sales pitch in terms of, and we have customers who have, gone with us and chosen Fintech OS purely because, we've been able to commit to getting them up and running a much faster time than anybody else. But, that said, we're not an off the shelf, kind of SaaS product, so it's not just a case of dropping some logins over to our customers and then they're away. There's a relatively long lead time between signing the contract or agreeing to go with Fintech OS and then actually going live with the product. And so it can be weeks, 8 weeks, it can be 3 months, it can be 6 months. It really depends on the complexity of what the customer's doing. And so we go through a full analysis phase, scoping phase with them to make sure we understand the business requirements, what they're trying to achieve, the technical requirements, etc., before we start actually building stuff. But I guess the key really for us, and again, it differs from customer to customer, but we try to always operate on kind of an iterative, agile basis, meaning that, as we go through the development process, we're in constant contact with the customer and we're doing regular kind of demos and updates as to what it is we're building so that they can see what it is that their end product will look like. They can see something tangible. They can see and taste this is what it's going to look like, and that way we can verify that as we're going down the road it's in line with their expectations. And I think that mechanism of working directly alongside the customer throughout the process is our answer to try and get in that kind of time to value. I think the other side of it is obviously once they go live, that's where CS really comes in. And, we usually introduce into the process earlier than that, but that's where we would really look to come in, understand and tie back, to their objectives and metrics that we quantified at the start of the process, or the salespeople quantified at the start of the process, and start to talk to the customer about, okay, you've just launched, or you launched a month ago. How successful has it been? You told us you were trying to achieve this objective. Has that been met? That's really our answer. I think, but we are working on other processes. I think we need to there's more work that we can do to get that time to value realized even quicker. Again, I think that's part of our journey over the next few months.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about sort of the feedback loop, and I guess it's part of customer and client engagement. And in a way, that process and that feedback loop it sounds like it's helping you develop a deeper understanding of the client and also a deeper relationship with the clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a process which I'm looking at right now, and I think customer feedback in and of itself, it's a multi-dimensional task really, or concept, in the sense that it really needs to come in lots of different ways, and you need to have different avenues as a company to be able to ingest it and review it and act on it. And so I would say at the moment, or certainly over the last kind of 12, 18 months or so, our feedback process is mostly qualitative, in the sense that it comes from speaking to the customers. It comes from the meetings and that we have with them, and just the regular conversations, understanding how things are going, tackling challenges, stuff like that. And that relationship-based feedback is obviously super important. It's really been driving the developments of our product, and it's been in driving our where we put our attention is customer success. And one of the things which I suppose linked to this that we're looking to build on, and again I'm looking at right now, which is building things like joint roadmaps with customers and really opening up the conversation with them around what they're looking to do in the next 12 months, what we're looking to do, aligning their objectives with their pipeline and stuff like that. And again, we're doing that kind of like informally right now with some customers, but not really in any kind of operationalized way. And so we're just going through a process now of starting to identify who our key strategic customers are. Again, we built up obviously a good customer base, but we've never really analyzed them in terms of segmenting and what kind of experience each customer wants with us in terms of from a CS or ongoing relationship perspective. Who are our big kind of tier one customers that we need to be having a really kind of one-to-one mindset with. Who are our customers who expect a different type of service, maybe not quite as in-depth, etc. Who are the customers that we that want to have that relationship with us, where they tell us about they talk to us about our roadmap and their roadmap, etc. And so we have that kind of feedback process in place. But we've started then, and again, this is something which I'm looking to build on, is to start introducing more quantitative mechanisms for feedback. So we have done a few months ago, we did our first real customer survey, NPS, Net Promoter Score survey. The response rate wasn't great, to be honest. It was in line with, I think, kind of typically what you expect, the average for the industry, but it was pretty low. And there was also, I think a learning experience for me in terms of, again, we operate a lot in Central Eastern Europe. And so, I had a few responses which kind of indicated that, the people that receiving it, they didn't really understand just the concept of NPS, So we had people, for example, there's someone respond who we know is a big champion of Fintech OS at one of our key customers, but they scored a 0 on the survey or a 1 on the survey, and the response was, why would I recommend a vendor to a friend? And so for me that kind of was just like, clearly maybe just the whole concept of the NPS question itself doesn't really resonate that well. So maybe I need to change that moving forward. And so we're starting to look at those types of things, where they fit in our journey, who and how often we ask these kind of questions, how we do it to get the most effective feedback. Things like doing NPS on our service desk. So we have a technical support desk, which we've never really built into any kind of feedback mechanisms. We're doing that. And I think the other thing is we're breaking down, I'm looking to break down our customer journey into specific phases, and really try and target specific feedback around particular phases of that journey, so that we can really identify where we have drop-offs in terms of our service quality, and take action specifically at that point.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot in this space. I mean, you mentioned that you are using some elements of customer feedback, and you're pushing that back into different teams in the organization. I mean, what other strategies are you using to make certain that you keep connection with, for example, the product team or the delivery team or the professional services team, as you guys continue to grow, continue to scale, such that you're all on the same page?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and actually, I think this is one of the things which we've identified as an area that that we can improve. I think one of the challenges, as you said, of growing so quickly is that you get a lot of new faces into the company in different teams, and all of a sudden things can start to split off in their own different directions. And so I think the first thing is, and I kind of touched on this already, but I'm working with again with the CEO, and it's driving it really from the top down on this concept of bringing all of the customer facing teams and roles together around a single unified concept of customer success, and obviously then linking that out to the product teams in terms of helping them understand, for example, who our key strategic customers are. So again, I think as we've grown and as we've ingested more and more customers, kind of what naturally happens obviously is you get a lot of competing demands, and of course for a startup, and when you're growing, every customer is really important, but also you get to a stage where if you have conflicting demands and competing priorities, you really have to have mechanisms to be able to overcome and resolve those. And so I think we're going through again exercises right now where we're saying, okay, we have to recognize that we have a group of customers who just need a different level of service, not a better level of service. I don't see it in terms of offering them a better level of service, because I believe that every customer should get the same kind of quality of service, but they just need a different level of service. They need more frequent contact. They need more dedicated resources, etc. And so I think for us, it's our job, for example, in sales and customer success, to help the product teams and delivery teams understand that and understand who they are. And then, like I said, a minute ago, the other thing is, bringing the sales and the delivery team and the customer success team and, the marketing team, for example, around a common definition of what do we mean by customer success, and what's your role in it. So if you're a salesperson, what's your role in customer success? And so, for example, that might be, making sure that, what you're committing to in the pre-sales process, is what is followed through when we bring in the delivery team, for example. So again, a common thing which happens and which we've seen is, the sales team or the pre-sales team say, yeah, we can do this, yeah, we can do that, or yeah, if you want to achieve that in this time frame, no problem. And then, somebody from the delivery organization steps in and says, I'm sorry, that's totally unrealistic, or we can't do that, or we don't have the capacity to do that, etc. And obviously from the customer's perspective, if you look at it, its satisfaction level just completely drops through the floor. And all of a sudden, before you've even started, you're on the back foot. And so I think, mapping kind of, for example, that phase and doing a better, job around that, that's their role or part of their role in terms of customer success. And then, for me, obviously, from a CS perspective, it's about, for example, understanding, okay, when we sold you this product, a year ago, you said to us that one of the things you wanted to achieve is you wanted to be able to, onboard X amount of new customers, or you wanted to, increase your speed of process from, whatever, like an hour to 5 minutes. Have you achieved that? And if not, where are you at, and what steps do we still need to take to be able to do that? How do I interact with the project manager, for example, if the project manager is on a project and we have a challenge or an issue that comes up? What's the dynamic between us, and how do we resolve that from the customer's perspective? Because, we don't want the customer to have different contact points all the time and stuff. So it's really about, I think, mapping out, all the roles, all the tasks, all the responsibilities, and circling it back to that concept of making the customer successful and making sure that everybody has their eye on that and has their responsibility, whether it's fixing a bug or delivering a project or closing a sale or, getting the satisfaction up, or, getting them to do a case study, etc. Making sure that's all linked back to the same goal of making them successful.
Yeah, listen, I completely agree with you there. And as you guys, continue over the next 12 months, 24 months, and you continue, I guess, scaling, what questions are you asking yourselves, and what factors are you considering as you continue on that growth and scale trajectory?
Yeah, so I think the next 12 months or so is going to be probably the most exciting and challenging 12 months so far for us. We raised Series A year ago, just less than a year ago. We've continued to grow since then. So you can expect to see us back in the funding space, in the coming months to really try and accelerate our growth. We've developed again a really strong presence in Central Eastern Europe. We're a very well-known name there. We work with pretty much all of the major financial institutions, and we've started to take some steps outside of that. In Western Europe, we've got a good presence now. We've got a team of probably 20 people now. I think in the UK, we've hired quite a few people recently. Our CEO is relocated here, to help drive the growth. We've doubled our headcount in Amsterdam, really, and we've got our CTO is there now, and we've just hired a VP of marketing in Amsterdam. So we're really investing, looking to grow and expand our presence. Investing a lot in product capabilities, delivery capabilities. So for me personally, I expect as our customer base grows, obviously, I'll expect to grow the team kind of 3 or 4x over the next year or so. We'll expand we're working more and more with partners. So we work with a lot of partners across Europe that help kind of sell and deliver our technology. And as we work with more of those, we'll bring in, we need to bring in more people to help manage that. But I think in terms of questions and factors, I think the first one, and I guess for me, the big one is the scalability of our product. So our product is quite complex. Again, like I said, we're not a we're not an off-the-shelf kind of product which you can just kind of log into. It takes we have a decent sized professional services practice. Like, so we have partners that we work with. It can be anything from a few weeks to a few months in terms of getting customers up and running. But I think, and whilst that will always remain the case, I think what our ambition really is, and what we're starting to do now with our kind of newest product releases, we're really driving towards a kind of no code, low code setup, and we really want to open up access to our technology, I think, on a much wider basis, and empower our customers and our partners to build using Fintech OS themselves. So, we see ourselves very much as a product company. We're not a services company. And so I think, we obviously have, when you look at in the market, I think we compare ourselves a lot, even though they're not directly in our space. We look at companies like UiPath, which incidentally is Romanian. So there's always a good kind of good view of what they're doing from our perspective. But other companies like OutSystems, Appian, these guys have been really, really successful on the back of really democratizing access to the product and making it quite easy for people to come in and start building really cool stuff using their technology. And so I think for us, one of the things that we're looking to do is, if you have, as a company, if you have a big reliance on your professional services practice, so every time a customer wants to do something with Fintech OS, they come to us and we have to go through a whole kind of scoping process, and they have to pay professional services fees and line up the project a few months down the road. Obviously, it creates a big barrier to growth. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is really kind of, again, open that up. We're building, again, we're investing in a lot in training. We're building an online academy, Fintech OS Academy, which will be again open access online, so that people can come in and go, okay, Fintech OS is a platform, it looks really cool, can I get certified on it, can I start to build things myself? And for our customers especially, I think really that's the way forward is we want to be able to kind of put Fintech OS in the customer and say, of course, up front, we will build stuff with you and we'll always obviously be there to support them. But, if you want to, for example, whether you're a bank, if you want to build your onboarding journey with us and we'll do it with you, then when you want to add on, for example, a credit card journey or a mortgage journey, you can do it yourself. And I think we see that, that's a really obviously big way to kind of accelerate the growth. And I think the other thing, probably just in terms of factors and questions, is adapting to different markets. So not just in terms of the product, but in terms of the marketing and the positioning of the product. And I think actually there's a lot of similarities between markets in terms of especially across Europe. So for example, everybody is talking about open banking, right? And how they bring that in, and whether it's in the UK or in Romania or in Poland or wherever else, it's open banking is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and as is mobile first, online first. But there's also still a lot of differences. So again, as I said earlier, in Eastern Europe, there's still a big reliance on the branch network, for example, in banking. But here in the UK, people are closing branches left, right, and center, and so how does that affect your position, as a brand? How do you work around that? What's your messaging? As well as things like regulation, compliance differences. There's a lot of different views and requirements, for example, around the use of cloud service providers and stuff like that. And so none of that stuff is really standardized across Europe. And so for us, we're starting, again, from a process perspective, operational perspective, we're starting to look at and think about how we adapt to that. What's worked in Eastern Europe might not necessarily work exactly the same as we come to tackle the UK, which is a slightly more mature market in terms of digital capabilities. So things like that, I think, again, are big questions for us.
Yes, I mean, listen, some really great and valuable insights there. I mean, I could pick up on many points there. Maybe one is, I quite like what you mentioned about scalability, making certain that you have a product that is scalable. And part of that is empowering your customers. And you guys obviously in the midst of setting up or have completed setting up a training academy. I mean, that's pretty impressive, because that gives you, ultimate scalability. You don't need to have boots on the ground. Your professional services team can be lean and move around from project to project pretty quickly.
Exactly. No, yeah, exactly. And so whilst we will always have that, and at the end of the day, especially when you're talking about big projects, a lot of banks, financial institutions, they need that support. They need external expertise, whether it's on the ground in terms of development, or whether they're talking about the overall technical architecture or solution architecture, etc., or even just we get a lot of questions from banks and insurance companies in terms of what are our competitors doing, what do you see in the market. So all of this type of service and advice our customers ask for, and so we'll always have that, and I think it's a really big factor for us. But yeah, absolutely, like you said, is at the same time the expectation now, and more so with any type of technology, is that it becomes more and more plug and play, and that the lead time to, like you say, from saying yes to actually using it, it's shrinking on a regular basis. And so we need to obviously kind of make sure that we go with that, and really, again, simplify our product to the extent that somebody who has a good technical background, for example, can open up Fintech OS and really just start building stuff, and then collaborate with people. And again, as well as the academy, we're looking to build things like community, Fintech OS community and forum and things like that, where people can start to share ideas and talk about what they've built. And you see a lot in the market, for example, people talking about how quick onboarding journeys are now, or how many clicks they have, and stuff like that. And I think all those type of kind of little angles are really interesting, and create a really good base for a community built around this type of innovation. And so I think that's really the focus point for us. And it's again, yeah, absolutely right. It's about putting our customers in the position where we can say to them, look, here's Fintech OS. Again, we're here for you. We'll help you. But equally, you can build this yourselves over the next few years. You can really extend this in whatever way you want, and plug it into and overlay it onto your existing systems. Because that's one of the other things which we come across a lot, is obviously taking systems out of financial institutions especially is very difficult. It's not really about that. It's about how do you fit alongside those existing systems and within their existing infrastructure to add new things. And so that's really, I think, what we're trying to do.
Yeah, cool. And as directors and leaders of businesses, we always looking to continuously improve. And in that vein, I mean, have you been reading or just finished reading any books or listening to any podcasts that you've been inspired by and you think the community might benefit from?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so actually in the, over the last several years, I've been a big fan of, leadership development and trying to improve myself as a leader and as somebody operating at a high level within the company. I have to admit, over the last kind of, 6 months or so during lockdown, I've kind of, I've focused more on, reading, less stressful stuff. So I'm just finishing off the Witcher series, funnily enough. But no, I think, actually something that I referenced recently because internally, so, and something that I'm a big fan of is, we're looking at ways that I'm leading a kind of program internally that looks at, how we develop our reward systems internally. And I referenced, a great book, which I'm a big fan of, which is Drive by Daniel Pink. Where he talks about obviously what motivates us. And so, that's something which is definitely, influencing me right now in terms of, how I'm approaching that. I think, again, in terms of general leadership, I'm a big fan of things, by Daniel Goleman. So again, something for me really important from a CS perspective is emotional intelligence. So, anybody who wants to get into this space, or anybody who is in this space and is looking to grow, I think, being really able to understand, and empathize with your customers and put yourself in their position and, manage yourself through challenging times, and then helping manage them. I think, that's a critical skill for me. And it is something that I look at really closely, during, interview processes and as people develop, really making sure that they can put themselves in the position of the customer, and that they have a commitment, really just really high standard of customer service. The other thing I would say as well is again, for people specifically from a CS world, there is a growing community, for CS out there, on LinkedIn, and books, now being released. I'd strongly encourage people to look at those. Go on Amazon and search for customer success, and you'll find quite a few. But there's a lot of development now in that space in terms of best practices and how to actually go about everything from how do you build a success plan with a customer to how do you do business reviews with them. I think because there's no right and wrong answers yet really in customer success, there's still a lot of questions around the best way to do things and what the role of CS is. I think reading that kind of stuff, taking inspiration from people who are doing the role and have been doing the role for a while is something which we should all do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And as we wrap up the show, I mean, how can people find and connect with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so Fintech OS, you can just find us online or on LinkedIn. Me personally, you can look me up on LinkedIn. Just Mark Berry. I think we're trying to do a lot more from a Fintech OS perspective. We're doing a lot more in terms of events and stuff. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, for example, you'll see I was speaking with one of our customers just last week at a financial summit where we talked about innovation. We have a lot of people doing lots of different events around the industry. We're hosting our own event a few weeks called FinVision. It's the first event that we're hosting ourselves, where we have a lot of senior speakers from the likes of MasterCard and Microsoft and banks, from around Europe, talking about the latest trends in finance, in banking, insurance, etc. So I think probably LinkedIn. We post all of our stuff on there, so you can follow Fintech OS on there. And again, especially here in the UK, you'll see a lot more from us, in that space.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for taking the time today. And it's been pretty impressive listening to the insights that you shared with us. And again, thanks for taking the time today, Mark.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.